I found out my husband was cheating on me, but the real shock? The other woman was his own cousin, and everything changed. I'm Emily. I'm 34 years old, living in a quiet suburban neighborhood just outside of Chicago. For 10 years, I lived what I thought was the perfect life. Mark and I met in college, both fresh-faced and full of dreams. We were inseparable from the moment we met, our love, fast, intense, and, in my eyes, destined to last. Over the years, we had built what seemed like an ideal life together. 2 kids, a cozy home, a solid career. On the surface, everything was perfect. But as time went on, I started noticing little changes. Mark, the man I had married, seemed distant. He was always busy with work or out with friends. He was tired, forgetful, and even more so, he started becoming more protective of his phone. The little things I ignored at first, like the unexplained late nights, the cryptic text messages that I never dared question, the odd mood swings that would come and go. At first, I dismissed it all. I told myself I was just being paranoid, that I was overthinking things. But deep down, something told me I wasn't imagining it. Our families were close. Mark's family especially was like my second family. His cousin, Sarah, was someone I trusted deeply. We'd grown up together, and I'd spent countless holidays with her, often sharing moments of joy and laughter. I considered her my sister. It was on a quiet Wednesday night, after putting the kids to bed, that I found something I couldn't ignore. I'd noticed that Mark had been glued to his phone more than usual. His eyes darted nervously when I walked by. It was unlike him. But what could I say? I didn't want to jump to conclusions to accuse him without proof. But then, on that particular evening, I just had this gut feeling that I couldn't shake. I had never been one to snoop, but curiosity got the best of me. While he was in the shower, I picked up his phone, his unlocked phone, and scrolled through his messages. At first, it seemed harmless, just regular texts, nothing out of the ordinary. But then I saw it, a message, late at night, from an unsaved number. The message read, "I miss you. Can't wait to see you again tonight." My heart skipped a beat. I recognized the number immediately. It was Sarah's. I put the phone down, my stomach twisting into knots. Could this be real? Was I really seeing what I thought I was seeing? Was this some kind of joke? Some sick prank? I tried to push the thought away. I convinced myself I was wrong. Maybe it was an innocent mistake. Maybe she was talking to someone else, and it was just a harmless flirtation. But deep down, I knew I had to get to the bottom of this. I waited until Mark finished his shower. He seemed to be in a rush, anxious, like he had somewhere to be. We exchanged pleasantries, but there was a noticeable tension in the air. My mind raced with questions. How could he do this to me? How could he betray me with someone I trusted? That night, sleep eluded me. My mind was consumed with the thought of Mark and Sarah. What kind of relationship did they have? When had this all started? Was it just a fling, or was it something more? I knew that I needed answers, but I didn't know how far this betrayal ran. Then, a few days later, I had an opportunity that would change everything. I found myself in the bedroom, alone, and for reasons I can't fully explain, I felt the urge to check the security cameras. Mark had installed them just for security, but I'd never needed to check them before. I didn't know what I was looking for. I didn't know what I'd find. But when I rewound the footage from earlier that day, my heart stopped. There it was. Mark with Sarah in our bedroom. They weren't just talking. They were kissing. And suddenly, everything I thought I knew about my life, my marriage, and my family shattered. The trust I had spent 10 years building was gone in an instant. The days after I found out about Mark and Sarah were a whirlwind of confusion, disbelief, and anger. The moment I saw them together, everything I thought I knew about our marriage shattered. I couldn't stop thinking about it. Every thought I had, every memory we shared, now felt tainted, like a lie I'd been living. How had I been so blind? At first, I didn't know what to do with the emotions crashing down on me. Anger, sadness, betrayal. They all felt like they were tearing me apart. But I had to act. I had to know the truth, and I couldn't trust Mark to tell me. So I did what I never thought I would do. I started digging. The first thing I did was check his phone again. I didn't want to. I didn't want to feel like some kind of crazy detective. But I couldn't stop myself. I had to know the full extent of his lies. And there it was. More messages from Sarah. They weren't just casual texts. They were intimate, affectionate messages. Messages that made it clear this wasn't a one-time thing. It was a full-blown affair. I felt sick to my stomach. I couldn't breathe. I didn't know how to process what I was seeing. I had so many questions. How long had this been going on? Had he been hiding it from me for months? For years? What did Sarah mean to him? Was she more than just a cousin? Were they in love? The thoughts kept circling in my mind, and I couldn't make sense of any of it. That night, I tried to confront Mark. I sat him down and told him what I knew. His reaction was exactly what I expected. Shock, disbelief, and then denial. He tried to defend himself, saying it was just a mistake, that it didn't mean anything. He begged me to believe him, to give him a chance to explain. But how could I? The evidence was right in front of me. How could I ignore the messages, the late nights, the secretive behavior? How could I forgive someone who had been so close to me, someone who had made me feel like I was the only one, only to discover that I was never enough? He swore it wasn't serious, that he loved me, and that it was just a momentary lapse in judgment. But I didn't believe him. How could I? If he truly loved me, why would he betray me like this? Why would he hurt me in the worst possible way, with the one person I trusted the most? I was starting to lose hope that this marriage could ever be saved. But then, something unexpected happened. Just when I thought I couldn't handle it anymore, Mark started to change. He apologized over and over again. He said he was willing to do whatever it took to fix things, to make it right. He begged me not to leave him, promised he would end things with Sarah, and that he would prove his loyalty to me. Part of me wanted to believe him. Part of me wanted to forgive him, to try and rebuild the life we had. But another part of me, the part that felt betrayed, humiliated, and broken, couldn't let go of what I had seen. How could I trust him again? How could I ever look at him the same way? The emotional turmoil I was feeling became unbearable. I didn't know what to do. Every day felt like a battle between my heart and my mind. My heart wanted to forgive him, to pretend like nothing had happened, to return to the life we once had. But my mind knew better. I couldn't ignore the truth. I couldn't ignore what I had seen. The reality of what he had done was too much to bear. And then, just when I thought things couldn't get worse, I found something that made everything even more complicated. After days of relentless confusion and heartbreak, I could no longer live in the limbo of uncertainty. I needed to know the truth, no matter how much it would hurt. I couldn't let this lie sit in the pit of my stomach any longer. I had to confront Mark, and I had to do it now. I had been going over the details in my head over and over again, the messages, the lies, the broken promises. My trust in him was completely shattered. But still, something inside of me felt a strange pull to find out more. Maybe it was the hope that I would find a reason to stay, or maybe it was just pure anger, pushing me to finally face the truth, even if it was ugly. I decided that I would confront Mark once and for all. No more lies, no more pretending. He needed to be held accountable for his actions. That evening, I waited for him to get home from work, the weight of the moment pressing down on me. I had rehearsed in my head what I would say, but nothing could have prepared me for the conversation that was about to unfold. When Mark walked through the door, he seemed uneasy, as if he could sense that something was off. I didn't waste time. I walked up to him, my heart racing, and I asked him point blank, "How long have you and Sarah been seeing each other?" His face went pale. He stammered, unable to find the right words, but the truth was already written all over his face. I didn't need him to confirm it. I already knew. But hearing him admit it out loud was like a gut punch. He tried to deny the affair at first, claiming that it was nothing, just a moment of weakness, something that meant nothing to him. But the more he spoke, the more I realized how deep the betrayal ran. He was lying straight to my face. I could feel my chest tighten with every word he said. His excuses felt like salt in an open wound. He kept saying, "I love you, Emily." But how could I believe him now? How could I believe in anything he said when I knew what he had done behind my back? In that moment, I was flooded with a mix of emotions. Anger, sadness, disbelief. But more than anything, I felt disgusted. The man I had trusted with my life had broken that trust in the most brutal way possible. And it wasn't just a random mistake. This wasn't a slip-up. It was a calculated betrayal, and the person involved wasn't some stranger. It was Sarah, my cousin, the woman I had always considered family. I couldn't understand how it had happened. How did I not see the signs? How did I let him get away with it for so long? And what hurt even more was the realization that Sarah, the person I trusted and loved, had helped tear my family apart. But my confrontation with Mark didn't end there. In the heat of the moment, something inside of me snapped. I couldn't let this slide. Not this time. I needed answers. I needed to know the full extent of what had happened, how long it had been going on, and most importantly, why he thought he could get away with it. And that's when I made a decision that would change everything. I would take matters into my own hands. I would no longer be a passive observer in my own life. I was going to find the truth. All of it. I couldn't help but wonder what else he had been hiding from me. What other lies had he been telling me? What else had he been keeping in the shadows, far from my prying eyes? I needed to find out, no matter what it took. So, I began to dig deeper, determined to uncover every last secret. That's when I stumbled upon something I never expected. It was a discovery that would take everything to an entirely new level, and it would be the beginning of a journey I wasn't ready for. The more I dug, the more I realized just how deep the lies went. I had hoped, for a fleeting moment, that I was overreacting. Maybe it was just a misunderstanding, something I could fix. But as I found more and more pieces to this horrifying puzzle, the truth became undeniable. I started going through his personal things, his emails, his social media accounts, and even the receipts I found hidden in his jacket pocket. Mark had been so careful, so meticulous in covering his tracks. But I was determined to find every clue. And that's when I found something that left me speechless. It was an email from Sarah, an email that had been sent just a few days before the confrontation, one that detailed their plans for the future. They weren't just fooling around. They were talking about building a life together. The words jumped out at me. We can't keep hiding this. I don't want to keep living a lie. We can make this work. You and me together. The sting of those words hit me harder than anything else I had found. It wasn't just about the affair anymore. This was about the future, about him planning a future with her, without me. I felt my chest tighten, my mind racing. The betrayal wasn't just physical, it was emotional, it was long-term, and it wasn't something he planned to end anytime soon. I had been living in this toxic relationship, believing that everything was fine, while Mark and Sarah were plotting behind my back. All those late nights at work, the excuses, the sudden trips that seemed out of the blue, it was all starting to make sense. Everything had been a lie. But this wasn't the worst part. The worst part was yet to come. As I continued reading through their emails, I found another detail, one that cut deeper than the rest. Mark had already planned to leave me. The affair was just the beginning. He was already talking about how he would tell me it was over, how he would leave me without causing a scene. He even asked Sarah if she would be able to support him during the transition. It was as if I was just a footnote in his life, a relationship he was eager to abandon. I could feel my stomach churn with each new revelation. The anger was swelling inside me, but so was the pain. How had I been so blind? How had I trusted this man for so long, only to find out that everything I thought we had was a lie? And what hurt the most was that Sarah, the woman I had considered a sister, was the one who helped destroy everything. It took everything I had to stop myself from breaking down completely. The emotional toll this was taking on me was unimaginable. I had trusted both of them. And now, I had to face the reality that they had both betrayed me in the worst way possible. The more I learned, the harder it became to breathe. I felt like I was suffocating under the weight of these lies. But I couldn't stop. I needed to know everything. I needed to understand why they did this to me, why they thought they could take everything from me and leave me broken. That's when I decided I couldn't just sit back anymore. I had to confront both of them, and I had to do it on my terms. I wasn't going to let them destroy me. I wasn't going to be the victim in this story. I was going to take control and make sure they faced the consequences of their actions. It was time for the truth to come out. No more hiding, no more lies. I couldn't hold back any longer. The truth had been laid bare in front of me, piece by painful piece. There was no more denying it, no more pretending I hadn't seen the signs. It was time to confront them, both of them, and force them to face what they had done. But I wasn't going to approach this passively. I had been lied to for too long. It was time to make them feel the weight of their actions. Mark was the first target. I knew he would try to deny everything, but I didn't care anymore. I had the proof. I had everything in front of me. The emails, the messages, the plans they had made. There was no escape. The man I once loved had planned to destroy everything we had for a future with someone else. And that was something I could never forgive. I waited until he got home from work that night. He walked in, as if nothing was wrong, as if nothing had changed. His nonchalant attitude only fueled the anger bubbling inside me. I stood there, watching him, my arms crossed. I couldn't look at him without feeling the sting of betrayal. Finally, he turned to me, his face full of that familiar, comforting smile. "Hey, babe, how was your day?" he asked casually. That was the moment. The moment I realized that no matter how much I loved him, I couldn't go back to the way things were. I couldn't look at him and pretend that everything was fine. Not after what I knew. So I did what I had to do. I didn't even hesitate. I tossed the stack of emails and messages onto the kitchen table, right in front of him. His eyes widened as he scanned the papers. "What is this?" he asked, his voice suddenly shaking. "You think I'm stupid?" I shot back. "You think I didn't know? You think I wouldn't find out?" Mark opened his mouth, but no words came out. He was speechless. His expression was a mix of guilt and fear, but I wasn't done yet. "And Sarah? My own cousin?" I continued, my voice rising. "You thought I wouldn't notice? You thought I wouldn't see the way you two looked at each other, the way you've been hiding behind my back?" He took a step back, his face flushing. "Emily, please," he started, but I wasn't about to let him talk his way out of it. Not this time. "You've lied to me for months, Mark," I said, my voice trembling with anger. "You planned this behind my back. You've been planning a future with her while I've been right here, trusting you, loving you, giving you everything I had." He opened his mouth again, but I didn't want to hear it anymore. The lies, the excuses, they all fell flat. I had given him the chance to be honest, to come clean. But instead, he chose to betray me. And now it was too late for any apologies. I couldn't undo the hurt. "I'm done," I whispered, my throat tight. "I can't do this anymore." But it wasn't just Mark was done with. Number it was Sarah too. The betrayal didn't just come from him. It came from the woman I thought was my family, someone who I trusted with my life. I wasn't going to let them both destroy everything I had built for the last decade. I wasn't going to be their pawn anymore. It was time for me to stand up for myself, to stop being the one who always forgave, the one who always took the high road. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest as I made my decision. I wasn't going to forgive them this time. I was going to fight back. Mark tried to approach me, but I raised my hand to stop him. "You've done enough," I said, my voice steady but filled with finality. "I don't want to hear anything else. I don't want to see you anymore." And with that, I turned my back on him for the first time in years. I didn't look back. I couldn't. As I walked out of the house, I felt a mix of emotions: pain, anger, betrayal, but also relief. For the first time in months, I felt like I was free. Free from the lies, free from the deceit. It was a moment of clarity, a moment where I realized that my happiness, my future, didn't depend on him anymore. It depended on me. But little did I know, this was just the beginning. Because the battle for my peace of mind wasn't over. I still had one more confrontation to face, and this one would change everything. After the confrontation with Mark, I felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I was angry, but there was also a sense of relief. The lies were out in the open, and I was no longer living in denial. But as I stood there in the silence of my home, the gravity of what had just happened started to sink in. The divorce, the betrayal, it all felt surreal, like it wasn't really happening. I took a deep breath and tried to steady myself. It wasn't just Mark that I had to confront now. The person who had helped break me, the person I had once trusted with my life, was still out there. Sarah. The thought of facing her made my blood run cold. The betrayal cut deeper than I could have imagined. She wasn't just my cousin. She was someone I had grown up with, someone I thought I could rely on. And yet, she had helped destroy everything I'd ever known. But I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I couldn't. I decided to confront her, but not right away. I needed to be sure. I needed to be prepared. Sarah had always been a little manipulative, but I never thought she would cross such a line. She had been there for me through thick and thin, but now I realized that she had been lying to me the entire time. The guilt of knowing she'd betrayed me wasn't just overwhelming, it was suffocating. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but everything inside me screamed that I needed answers, and I needed them now. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that the trust I had placed in her was gone. She had been the one to comfort me when I found out about Mark, yet she had been the one sneaking around plotting behind my back. I could feel the anger bubbling up again. And so I waited. I didn't reach out to her immediately. I wanted to see how she would act. Would she feel guilty? Would she reach out to apologize? Would she try to lie her way out of it like Mark did? I needed to know if she would own up to what she did, or if she would keep hiding behind her lies. Days passed. The silence between Sarah and me was deafening. It was almost like she knew I knew. But she didn't come to me. She didn't confess. The more time passed, the more my frustration built. I felt betrayed by the people I had trusted the most, and it was killing me. The worst part was that I couldn't even begin to understand why they did it. Why Mark chose her over me. Why Sarah thought she could get away with this. The day I finally decided to confront her came without any warning. I was done waiting. I needed closure. I needed to hear her say it. I needed to see the guilt in her eyes. It was late afternoon when I arrived at her place. I rang the doorbell, my heart pounding in my chest. She opened the door slowly, almost as if she was expecting me. There was a moment of silence before she spoke. "Emily," she said, her voice wavering slightly. "We need to talk." I nodded, stepping inside. "You're right," I replied. "We do need to talk. About everything." The tension was thick and I could feel her anxiety radiating off of her. But I wasn't going to make it easy for her. This wasn't just a casual conversation. This was about everything I had lost, about the trust she had shattered. I wasn't going to let her manipulate me into thinking that this was something that could be fixed. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" I asked, my voice steady but firm. She looked down, avoiding my gaze. "Emily, No," I interrupted. "Don't give me any excuses. You and Mark, behind my back, for months. You think I wouldn't find out? You think I wouldn't notice?" Her face fell, and I could see the guilt written all over her. She opened her mouth, but the words didn't come. I shook my head. "You ruined everything. For what? For a relationship that was built on lies? For a future that you knew would hurt me?" She finally met my gaze, her eyes filled with regret. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I didn't mean for this to happen. I never wanted to hurt you." But it was too late for apologies. "You've already done the damage. What's done is done. And I'll never forgive you for this." She broke down in front of me, tears streaming down her face. But I couldn't feel sorry for her. Not anymore. She had chosen her path, and now she had to live with the consequences. For the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of relief. The weight of the betrayal was still there, but I had confronted it. I had taken control of the situation, and now it was time for me to heal. The moment I spoke those words to Sarah, something shifted. It wasn't just the weight of the words, but the gravity of the situation that made me feel like the ground beneath me had shifted. For the first time in years, I was no longer the one chasing after the truth. I wasn't the one trying to salvage something that had already been broken. I was the one with the power now, the one who could make the decision on how this would end. But even with the newfound clarity, I couldn't escape the lingering question: why? Why would Sarah, of all people, betray me like this? Was it about the man? Or was it about something deeper, something I couldn't see before? The anger in me was still raw, but it was mixed with confusion and sorrow. We were family, and I had trusted her like no one else. The fact that she could do this to me, to us, was the part I couldn't reconcile. It wasn't just a betrayal, it was a complete and utter dismantling of the trust I had placed in her. She wasn't just my cousin, she was my closest confidant. To think that she had been lying, sneaking behind my back, was a wound I wasn't sure could ever heal. But as the days passed after that confrontation, something strange started to happen. My anger began to give way to a strange sense of indifference. I wasn't crying anymore. I wasn't raging. I was just numb. And that was when I realized this is how it's going to be from now on. I would never get the answers I was seeking. The why would never make sense, and it wasn't up to me to figure it out. The only thing I could control was how I moved forward. And I couldn't move forward with Sarah in my life anymore. But it wasn't just her I had to confront. No, Mark was still out there, and the reality of everything hit me harder than anything else. Sarah may have been the one I had to let go of, but Mark? Mark was someone I had shared my life with for so long. How do you just walk away from someone who you built a life with? How do you turn your back on the man you thought you would grow old with? I didn't know how to approach him. I didn't know if I wanted an explanation from him or if I just wanted him to feel the weight of his actions. Maybe it wasn't about the words anymore. Maybe I didn't need him to apologize. Maybe the only thing that mattered was that I had finally taken control. But then the phone rang. It was him. I didn't even hesitate to pick up. I knew what was coming, and I was ready for it. Emily, his voice cracked through the phone. I know you're angry. I know I've hurt you, but we need to talk. I closed my eyes for a moment, taking a deep breath. We've already talked, Mark, I replied, my voice flat. There's nothing more to say. You don't understand, he said quickly, almost pleading. I don't know what happened. It just happened. I wanted to scream at him. I wanted to tell him how much he had hurt me, how much I had given him, how much he had taken from me. But I stopped myself. This wasn't the time for that. I didn't need his excuses or his empty apologies. Mark, I don't need you to explain, I said, the words coming out more coldly than I intended. I don't need you to tell me why. What you've done, what you've taken. I can't undo it. I can't forgive you for it. And I don't want to hear it. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could hear him breathing, probably trying to find the right words, but there was nothing he could say that would make this better. I'm sorry, he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. I know, I replied, and I hung up the phone. And just like that, it was over. The story of us had ended with 2 words. I'm sorry. But those words meant nothing now. They weren't enough. They never would be. As I sat in the silence that followed, I realized something I had known deep down all along. I didn't need him anymore. I didn't need him to tell me he was sorry. I didn't need him to beg for my forgiveness. What mattered now was that I had finally taken control. Mark and Sarah were both out of my life. And for the first time in months, I felt a sense of freedom. Not just from them, but from the pain that had consumed me for so long. But the journey wasn't over. The hardest part of all was yet to come. Because while I had left them behind, I hadn't yet healed. And the path to healing was a long, uncertain road. But for the first time in forever, I wasn't walking it alone. The days that followed were strangely quiet. The house felt empty, not just because Mark and Sarah were gone, but because a piece of me had left with them. I found myself staring into spaces where memories used to live, feeling the weight of all I had lost. The comfort of routine vanished overnight, replaced by an unsettling stillness that echoed louder than any argument or betrayal ever could. I would sit in the living room, watching dust particles dance in the slivers of sunlight, thinking about the past, the laughter, the promises, the plans that were shattered. There was a deep loneliness in that silence, a sense of emptiness that was hard to shake. I realized then that pain doesn't just come from betrayal, it also comes from absence, from what's no longer there. But even as the loneliness wrapped around me, I found myself revisiting the moments before everything fell apart. Those small memories that once seemed insignificant now took on a new meaning. Like the time my mom's eyes flickered with something unspoken, a hesitation when she mentioned Mark's cousin Sarah during a family gathering, or the way Mark's phone screen always faced down on the table, hiding messages I never saw. Looking back, those were the warning signs I ignored, buried beneath my love and trust. And maybe I thought that was my biggest mistake, not the betrayal itself, but the blindness to it. The denial that love could sometimes be a dangerous gamble. Slowly, a fragile hope began to take root. I started seeking new purpose beyond the ruins of my broken marriage and fractured family. Sometimes it was just the simple act of getting out of bed, making coffee, and breathing in the morning air without a knot of dread. Other times, it was volunteering at a local shelter or reaching out to friends who reminded me of a life beyond pain. I wasn't ready to forgive, not Mark, not Sarah, not even myself, but I was learning to live with the scars. These scars, I realized, were not just reminders of what I lost, but proof of my resilience. They told a story of survival, of a woman who faced the unimaginable and chose to keep moving forward. One evening, as I flipped through old photos, a familiar notification lit up my phone. It was a message from a stranger, someone who had heard pieces of my story. "You're stronger than you know," it read. It was a small gesture, but it meant the world to me, a reminder that even in the darkest times, light can find a way in. Yet, despite these moments of grace, the past was never far behind. The wounds were raw, and sometimes they reopened with a sharpness that caught me off guard. I wondered if the pain would ever fully fade, or if it was something I would carry with me forever. I thought about the people I used to be, the hopeful, trusting Emily, and wondered if she was still inside me somewhere, or if she had been lost to the heartbreak. In the quiet moments of the night, when the world was asleep and I was left with my thoughts, I made a promise to myself. No matter how long the road ahead, no matter how deep the scars, I would find a way to heal. Not for Mark, not for Sarah, but for me. Because sometimes, the greatest act of courage is simply deciding to keep going when everything feels lost. As I sit here today, reflecting on everything that's happened, I find myself writing a letter, not to Mark, not to Sarah, but to the Emily who once was. The girl who believed in fairy tales, who thought love was enough to conquer all. The girl who trusted without question and gave her whole heart, only to have it broken into pieces. If I could go back, would I make the same choices? The answer is complicated, but deep down, I know I would. Because every tear, every sleepless night, every painful lesson taught me something invaluable about strength, about self-worth, about the courage to walk away. I've learned that life isn't about avoiding pain, but about embracing it, learning from it, and letting it transform you. The scars I carry aren't signs of weakness. They are symbols of survival. They remind me that I was broken, but never defeated. There's no clear right or wrong in this story, only a messy, tangled web of human emotions and choices. And maybe that's the hardest part to accept. The truth is, sometimes people we love hurt us. Sometimes family betrays us. And sometimes the people we thought we knew reveal themselves to be strangers. But in all this chaos, I found clarity. I found the power to reclaim my life, to rewrite my story on my own terms. And that's the message I want to leave with you. No matter how dark the night, the dawn will come. No matter how deep the pain, healing is possible. I'm not the same person I was 10 years ago. I'm stronger, wiser, and more aware of what I deserve. And as I close this chapter, I know I'm ready to face whatever comes next, with hope, with courage, and with a heart open to new beginnings. Sometimes, the end of a story is just the start of another. And while I can't promise what the future holds, I can promise this: I will never stop fighting for my happiness. Thank you for listening to my story. Maybe it's one you relate to, maybe it's one that makes you reflect on your own life. Whatever it is, remember this: your story matters, your pain matters, and your strength, no matter how hidden, is real. Not all wounds need healing. Some scars are meant to stay, reminders that we truly lived and loved.